What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing something that is kind of a little different, but at the same time also not really that different. So I used to make videos like this pretty regularly. If you scroll back to some of my earlier uploads, you'll see that a lot of my earlier uploads were longer form content done in a slideshow type of presentation. I just feel really comfortable presenting information in this type of format, and so it's a really easy way for me to communicate a point. So if I have a topic or something that I feel pretty strongly about and I kind of want to talk about a little bit more in depth and use a lot of visuals, I will probably be referring to this style of video to address that from here on out. The topic that I want to cover today is going to be training efficiency, and this is something that I feel very passionately about. Obviously if you guys are on my channel, then you are aware that I am a geek when it comes to training programming, and I think that one of the overall arching themes that I'm trying to accomplish when I'm writing a program for a client is how can I make this as efficient as possible for this person so that they can get exactly what they need out of the gym with the least amount of distractions. And so that's really what I want to be covering as a whole today. There are going to be a couple sub points that I want to cover within that, such as what does it mean to train efficiently, why would we want to train efficiently, and then what are some actual concrete examples of how we can make our training more efficient. So before we start talking about training efficiency and how we can improve training efficiency, it's pretty important to understand what efficiency even means. So efficiency is going to be a term that describes someone who is efficient. And the word efficient means that we're able of achieving maximum productivity with a minimum wasted effort or expense. And this picture that I kind of use here is pretty cheesy and pretty corny, but it really drives home the main point. We have a couple guys who are trying to push these boxes, and then we have this one guy who is pushing a ball. Obviously the guy who's pushing the ball is going to be moving the object in the most efficient way. He'll have the minimum amount of wasted effort, and he's achieving maximum productivity because of that. And so this is really important to understand when we talk about training efficiency, because it seems really elementary, but we need to actually understand what the term efficient means so we understand what we're trying to accomplish here. So why would we want to be efficient in the gym in the first place? And I think that this is a really important overarching theme to understand in all training programs, specifically where we're talking about hypertrophy, strength, CrossFit, whatever the stimulus is that we are trying to elicit within the athlete. We need to understand that the reason for being in the gym is to send that signal to our body, and that is it. This is something that I think a lot of people don't really understand, and I've talked about this kind of extensively on my TikTok channel. So if we think of building muscle as a pie chart, you know, we have a circle that's got a bunch of different components in it. There are going to be three major components to that circle. We're going to have our training, we're going to have our nutrition, and we're going to have our recovery modalities. And you can include supplementation and PEDs and all of those things in that recovery circle as well. And so when we take a look at all of these things, we have to look at them individually. And when we look at training, we need to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of the training within this entire scope of building muscle and concept of building muscle? And when we look at training specifically, it's important to understand that the purpose of the training and the only purpose of the training is to send the signal to your body that muscle growth needs to happen. The purpose of going into the gym is to do the work necessary that flips the switch to your body that says, okay, it's time to grow. But it's actually the nutrition and the recovery in which the muscle growth actually occurs. And that's a very important concept to understand, because most people, especially if you're going to be somebody who's on this channel, love to train. Being in the gym and training is our happy place. That's where we want to be. We enjoy being there. And a lot of people's love of training will cause them to train more than what is necessary in order to cause hypertrophy. So let's say we train, say here's where we're starting our workout at, and we train, and each set that we do, we start to build up hypertrophy. I'm just making shit up at this point. And once we get to a point where we have done enough hypertrophy work to send the signal to our body that says, okay, it's time to grow, in theory, it would be best to leave that gym immediately at that time. We've done the bare minimum amount of work that we need to do in order to stimulate growth, and now we need to focus on the thing that actually causes the growth to happen, which is the nutrition and the training. Most people's love for training will force them to train more than what is necessary. So like I said, let's say we get up to here and this is where hypertrophy occurs. Now, if somebody loves to train, they may do the work that's necessary, needed to stimulate hypertrophy, but then they may do a couple more exercises and they may do a couple more sets. And the difference between here and here is all extra work that you have to recover from. And in theory, we can think if that extra chunk of work was not there, the recovery process would be quicker and more efficient. And that is the overarching theme of why we want to be more efficient in the gym. Because every amount of work that we do that is beyond what is necessary in order to stimulate hypertrophy is all extra recovery debt that we have to recover from, which just makes that process longer and harder than it needs to be. If we can make that recovery process quicker and more efficient, we can train more effectively, more quickly, more frequently, and we can stimulate growth quicker, more effectively, and in theory, we would grow more by having more effective workouts and more efficient workouts and less wasted time doing things that aren't technically necessary. So now that we've kind of got that understood and out of the way, what I wanted to do now is talk about some of the most common examples of training inefficiency that I see personally. This is usually what I see that comes across my desk when I have new clients that apply to me or they sign up for a consultation with me or something along those lines, and I ask them what it is that they're doing in their training program. Usually when I'm making changes to client programs, what I'm doing is I'm simplifying everything, and these are typically the three most common things that I see get messed up when it comes to making people's training as efficient as it possibly could be. So the first would be the number of exercises in each individual session. The second would be the frequency in which they're training one muscle group or all of their muscle groups. And the third would be their set intensity and overall volume levels. So inefficiency number one, too many exercises per body part in each individual session. And so this is something that is pretty obvious to us at this point. When we are looking to structure a training program, we have a lot of exercises that we can choose from. When we look at our biceps, there are 10 different bicep curls that we can do. When we look at our lats, there are 10 different pull downs that we can do. There are so many exercises that we have to choose from. And one of the things that I find gets abused pretty frequently is people who will do multiple exercises within the same session that are basically doing the same exact thing and are basically hitting the same exact area. And one of the ways that I like to make that more efficient is to take all of those exercises in which you're kind of hitting the same area and reduce it to one or two of them. Really pick the ones that you like the most and really just focus on attacking those. Instead of focusing on doing a variety of exercises, let's just focus on one or two of those and really get as good as we can at those particular ones. So I'm going to give you like a hypothetical type of training session that I may see on an application here, and then in the next slide we'll talk about how I would improve the sessions that we're looking at here. So wouldn't be too infrequent for me to see a back and bicep session from somebody where they're doing 3 or 4 different row variations, 2 or 3 different pull down variations, some sort of a deadlift possibly, and then multiple different types of bicep curls. You know, the exercises that I picked in the sample session here are just real hypothetical ones, but it's not uncommon for me to see something like this, to see 7, 8, 9 total exercises within a training session that is only addressing 2 body parts. And a chest and tricep session may be something that's really, really similar. Lots of different presses, lots of different flies on a bunch of different angles. We may be doing some sort of dip and narrow grip presses and things along those lines, and then a bunch of different tricep extensions, overhead, underhand, sideways, all these different types of exercises that I may see in one individual session. And so one of the ways that I would make that more efficient is just reducing the total amount of exercises. What I would do is I would look at all of the pull down variations, and I would say, okay, hypothetically, all of these exercises, you know, bar some exceptions, are hitting relatively the same area. Let's pick one of these. Which one of these do you like the most? And let's just focus on doing that one in each individual session. And as we go down the line of our groups of exercises, all of our upper back movements, all of our lat movements, all of our bicep movements, if we start to reduce some of the unnecessary fluff and just really focus on the exercises that are the most bang for our buck. In the hypothetical situation that I gave, we had a back and bicep session that had 9 total exercises, which we reduced to 5. So that's obviously a drastic reduction in the amount of variety that you're doing, but it's not necessarily a reduction in the quality of stimulus, because a lot of the exercises that you were doing were just repetitive and you were just hitting the same areas over and over and over again. Maybe you were using a different grip on your pull downs or something, but you're still relatively hitting the same areas. And so making that process a little bit more efficient is just going to make recovery more efficient, and it's going to make progress within the gym and performance within the gym more efficient. And it's just going to be a much better time and much better results yielding program. For the chest and tricep session, I did the same thing. We had a session that was 8 exercises that got reduced to 5 just by making things more simplified. And I'm not going to go across, you know, all of these hypothetical situations and sessions just to kind of make this point be able to driven home. But hopefully you guys kind of understand what I'm talking about here, where I think it's like really important that you guys take a look at all of the exercises that you're doing in your sessions, and you try to find the ones that have a lot of overlap. Like if you're doing a lot of low rowing movements in the same workout, like maybe just pick one of those and just focus on getting really good at it, and just ignore the rest of them. Just really focus on the quality of a couple movements, and that is going to make your training much more efficient and your growth much more efficient than doing a variety of different exercises that are just hitting the same thing. So the second most common inefficiency that I see is the traditional bro split or the body part split, in which people are training muscle groups one time per week, and then they're going significantly long periods of time without hitting them again. So it's pretty well understood at this point in the hypertrophy literature that it's well within 24 to 48 hours, in most cases 48 hours, and potentially closer to 72, where muscle protein synthesis within muscles kind of wears off, and that gives us another really good opportunity for us to train them again, to re-signal that muscle protein synthetic response so that we can stimulate growth again. And I think one of the most common ways that I see this get missed out on is people following the traditional body part split, where they may just completely destroy their chest one day a week and then go a significantly long period of time without doing that again. And most people that are doing this type of split are getting this split from an influencer or an IFBB pro or somebody on Instagram or YouTube or whoever. And I think that is really the problem, is because in my opinion, the only people who really should be using the bro split or the body part split are those professional level bodybuilders or people who are potentially right on the cusp of becoming professional bodybuilders. In order to be at that level of competition, you are so developed as an individual that you need specific focus on each individual body part. But if you haven't acquired that level of muscle mass yet, and you haven't developed your physique that much yet, I think that there are much more efficient ways that we can structure our training by hitting things more frequently than one time per week. And in a lot of cases of the guys that I mentioned, the IFBB pros and influencers of the world, when they are trying to improve a body part, even though they are traditionally hitting everything one time a week, you will very frequently see them double or even triple up on that body part per week so that they hit it more frequently. So I think that renders the whole IFBB pros use body part splits and they grow argument pretty worthless, with the exception of a few cases, obviously, genetic anomalies, most of them. But even within the IFBB pro scene, you see guys who, when they need to drastically improve body parts, they drastically increase the frequency in which they are training them within the week. So I think that leaves a lot of clues. Success leaves clues about how we can really make our training the most efficient and really stimulate growth effectively and efficiently. And the way that we would remedy this would obviously be adjusting or adapting our training split to a training split that allows us to hit body parts more frequently. There are tons of different training splits out there that allow this to be done. I just list a few of them here: full body, upper lower, push-pull legs, and the Arnold split. Every single one of these programs that I listed here can be programmed a zillion different ways, not just the way that I have it written out on here. And that's really one of those things that's, it's definitely a topic for a different day. It would be a decent topic for a video like this, would be the difference between all of the training splits and compared to your level of training age and which one you fit in the most. And so this isn't really going to be a video comparing all of these training programs, but these are just going to be a couple examples of some of the most basic ones and some of the more common ones that you'll see get tossed around. And really the thing that makes these training splits so different than the bro split is going to be that increased frequency. And if you're someone who's of a younger developmental level, doing these exercises that you're going to be doing in these sessions, because they're predominantly focused on compound lifts, more frequently is going to give you more opportunities to get better at them, which is going to give you more opportunities to get stronger at them, which is going to be one of the main things, if not the main thing, that signals hypertrophy is mechanical tension progressive overload, which is, again, another topic for a different day. I don't want to ramble on that too much in this particular video. But really the main thing that we want to be working on here is hitting muscle groups more frequently than one time per week, and then being able to repeat that week after week after week after week, month after month after month after month. And then over the course of a year or two, we've trained those muscles so much more frequently that we have potentially stimulated hypertrophy so much more frequently as well. Okay, the third inefficiency that I see the most is people training with too high of training volumes, too low of intensities, or a combination of both. And this is really one of the main theses, one of the main points of my personal training philosophies is that the amount of work that is needed to stimulate muscle growth is something that is entirely dependent on how intense that work is. And so one of the ways that we can cut down on the amount of total workload that we're doing within the gym but still keep the quality of that session high is to make the quality of each individual set very high. And in order to do that, we need to train at higher levels of intensity. And so just a common chest and tricep session, like what I mentioned before, that somebody may be following, like a stereotypical bro split or something along those lines, may look like some of these exercises that we see here: a flat bench, an incline bench, couple flies, dips, narrow grip, extensions, and skull crushers, anywhere from 3 to 4 sets per exercise, which gives us, in this hypothetical situation, a session that has 13 sets of chest and 12 sets of triceps. And so the solution to making this session more efficient in my eyes would be to make each one of those sets more intense, which would reduce the amount of sets needed to stimulate hypertrophy, which would reduce the amount of total session time, which would give us more time outside of the gym resting and recovering. And so that was one of the main things that I did in this solution here is, aside from the fact that I reduced the total amount of exercises that we were doing, like I did in point 1, I took this from an 8 exercise session to a 6 exercise session. I also brought our total amount of workload from 13 sets of chest down to 5 and 12 sets of triceps all the way down to 4. And hypothetically, if the sets were done in the second session to true maximum failure, in my eyes, it's safe to conclude that the quality of stimulus that you would get within that session would be equal, if not potentially greater in some certain circumstances, than the session on the left, if the session on the left, some of those sets were not taken to failure. That's my personal belief, and you know, that's a controversial topic in the training world these days, is the volume versus intensity spectrum, and I'm sure my views on that topic are sure to change within the years to come. But as of the recording of this video, in my opinion, the second session would be equal in terms of muscle growth to the one on the left, and done in a much more efficient manner because we're doing less total exercises and less total sets. We're spending less total time in the gym, which means we're spending more time outside of the gym recovering, which is where the growth process actually happens. All right, guys, so just to conclude, a couple of the main points that we went over in today's video. So the process of being efficient means that we can achieve maximum productivity with minimum wasted effort or expense. And so we're really maximizing the quality of our work while minimizing the amount of unnecessary fluff that we're doing, which is going to lead to a more efficient and effective recovery process, which in theory will lead to a more efficient and effective results within your training program. Reducing the total number of exercises in each workout will allow you to stimulate hypertrophy without using excessive and or less optimal exercises. That's going to be the main thing that I talked about in my first point, is taking a look at your program and taking a look at all of your exercises and seeing if you're doing a lot of exercises that are very redundant. If you're doing a lot of incline chest flies within the same session, maybe you're doing one on a cable and one on a dumbbell, maybe you just pick one and then you do the other one on your other session, or you just ignore the other one and you just get really good at the other. I typically see this done in back sessions the most. People will do 3 or 4 different types of pull down variations that are all basically hitting the same muscle group. They're just using a different grip to hit that muscle group with, but it's basically the same exercise 4 different ways. Same thing with the rows, you know, a dumbbell row, a machine row, a cable row, and they're all hitting the same area. Just reduce the total number of those instances and just really focus on the one that you like the most and just get as strong as you possibly can at it. In order to train our muscles at a high frequency, the volume of each session must be low enough for the recovery to happen quickly. And so that was one of the main things that I talked about in my third point, is reducing the amount of total training volume, which is going to allow recovery to happen quicker so that we can train the muscle more frequently. In order to train the muscles with a low amount of training volume, the intensity of each set must be very high to cause the maximum amount of damage in the least amount of work. And so that was another point that I talked about in the third inefficiency, is by training at higher intensities, we can reduce the level of workload. And so all in all, what this really kind of looks like, in my eyes, the most efficient way to structure your training program is to structure it in a way in which you are hitting your muscles at high frequency. In order to hit those muscles at high frequency, the volume within each individual session needs to be low. And then in order to actually get muscle growth out of low volume training, each individual set has to be very high intensity and high quality in order to stimulate all the muscle fibers necessary to cause muscle to grow. And so I think the combination of a high frequency, low volume with high intensity type of setup to your training is going to be the most efficient way to set up your training program so that you're maximizing the amount of bang for your buck work that you're doing, and you're minimizing the amount of fluff bullshit outside that is going to negatively impact your recovery. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions on this particular topic, or you have a topic that you would like to see a video done in this style on, please feel free to leave it as a comment and I will get back to you guys as soon as I can. Thanks again for watching guys, and as always, take care of yourselves.